Let's be honest. If she really likes you, you expect her to text first, but she doesn't. And that silence doesn't just confuse you, it slowly rewires how you see yourself. You start replaying every conversation. You ask yourself if you said something wrong, if you were too much or not enough. And the hardest part, she still watches your story, still likes your post, still exists just close enough to keep you wondering. But here's what most men never understand. Her silence is not always distance. Sometimes it's control, not the toxic kind you're imagining, but emotional self-protection mixed with subtle attraction. Women don't always chase what they feel strongly for. In fact, when she likes you, she often becomes more careful, not more direct. Why? Because emotional investment makes her vulnerable. And vulnerability is something most people, not just women, try to manage carefully. So instead of texting you first, she waits. She observes. She studies your consistency. She wants to know if you are stable enough to handle her attention without overreacting, without getting needy, without changing your energy every time she pulls away. And this is where most men lose her without realizing it. Because you mistake her silence for disinterest, you start chasing. You double text. You start trying to fix something that was never broken in the first place. And the moment you do that, you shift the dynamic. You stop being the calm presence she was attracted to, and you become emotionally reactive. But what if I told you something even deeper? Sometimes she doesn't contact you first because she actually likes you more than you think. And that feeling scares her more than it excites her. Because liking someone isn't just attraction, it's risk, it's uncertainty, it's the possibility of rejection even when she has power in the situation. So she delays. Not because she forgot you, not because she's busy, but because she's trying to regulate how much of herself she gives away before she knows if you're emotionally safe. And here's the silent truth most men miss completely. She is not waiting for the perfect moment to text you. She is waiting for the proof that texting you won't make her regret it. And that proof comes from you. Not your words, not your compliments, not your chasing energy, but your ability to stay steady when she is inconsistent. Because in her mind, the man who can remain calm in uncertainty is the man worth investing emotion into. And if you've ever felt like she's close but not close enough, warm but not initiating, interested but distant, then you're already inside this pattern without realizing it. And what happens next decides whether she leans in or slowly fades out while still liking you from a distance. Because her next move is never random. It is always a response to your energy. And she is already deciding it right now. What most men never realize is that attraction doesn't always look like action. Sometimes it looks like hesitation, silence, distance that feels personal, but isn't actually rejection. Because when she likes you, she doesn't always move towards you immediately. She often moves around you first. She checks your reactions, not in obvious ways, but in subtle patterns you don't even notice. How fast do you respond? How you handle gaps in communication? Whether you panic or stay grounded when she pulls back slightly. And here is the uncomfortable truth. If she never contacts you first, it doesn't automatically mean low interest, but it does reveal something deeper about how she processes emotional safety. Many women are conditioned to believe that initiating too early gives away too much control. Not control over you, but control over how they are perceived. Because the moment she reaches out first, she is no longer just observing your interest. She is exposing hers, and exposure creates vulnerability. So instead, she waits for a signal from you that feels emotionally stable, not desperate, not unpredictable, not reactive, but calm, consistent, unbothered. And here's where things start to split between men who build attraction and men who unknowingly destroy it. The average man responds to silence with pressure. He increases effort, he sends more messages, he tries to fix the distance. But from her perspective, that shift changes everything because what she was testing wasn't your interest. She already knows you're interested. What she was testing was your emotional control under uncertainty. And when you start chasing, you unknowingly answer the test in the worst possible way. You confirm that your emotional state is dependent on her behavior. That is the moment she stops seeing you as emotionally safe and starts seeing you as emotionally reactive. But here's the twist most men miss completely. Even after she pulls back, she doesn't fully detach. She watches. She observes how you behave without her reinforcement, whether you collapse into overextending or whether you continue living your life with the same rhythm. And in that observation, she is building a silent conclusion about you, not based on your words, but your absence, because absence reveals stability more than presence ever does. If you disappear into anxiety when she is quiet, she feels your emotional dependence without you saying a single word. But if you remain steady, she feels something else entirely, curiosity, because now she is no longer sure she has full emotional influence over you. And that uncertainty flips something inside her psychology. Women don't just chase intensity, they chase emotional predictability wrapped in mystery. Too predictable, she gets bored. Too reactive, she feels unsafe. But that balanced middle ground, calm, slightly unavailable, emotionally stable, creates a pull she cannot easily explain. And this is why some men experience something strange. They do less, and suddenly she comes closer. Not because she stopped liking them before, but because the emotional environment finally feels safe enough for her to move forward without fear of overexposure. And yet, even at this stage, she still might not contact you first because now it is no longer about fear, it is about timing. And she is waiting for one more invisible confirmation before she steps further in. There is a moment in almost every slow-burning connection where everything looks the same on the surface, but something has already changed underneath. She still doesn't text first, she still watches. She still stays slightly out of reach, but internally she is no longer asking, "Do I like him?" She already knows the answer. Now she is asking something far more important in her mind. Does he create emotional space for me or emotional pressure? And this question decides everything because attraction for women is rarely just about the man. It's about how they feel inside the connection he creates. If she feels chased, she feels pressure. If she feels ignored, she feels distance. But if she feels that she can move towards you without losing herself, something shifts quietly. And here's where most men misread the situation completely. They think her lack of initiation means she is passive or unsure, but often she is actually pacing the emotional intensity. She is not moving randomly. She is regulating closeness because closeness for her has consequences. If she invests too fast and you don't match it, she risks embarrassment, rejection, or emotional imbalance. So instead, she tests the emotional temperature slowly. A reply here, a like there, a small interaction that looks casual but carries meaning. And while she is doing this, she is also watching something even more important than your attention. She is watching your identity when she is not reinforcing it. Do you stay the same person? Or do you become slightly anxious, slightly available, slightly altered by her absence? That difference is everything. Because attraction is not built when she is present. It is built in the space between interactions, and that space reveals your emotional structure. A man who is grounded does not change his emotional rhythm based on her behavior. He does not speed up when she appears or collapse when she disappears. He stays consistent, and consistency is what allows her nervous system to relax around him. Because deep attraction is not excitement alone, it is emotional safety combined with curiosity. But here's the part most men never hear clearly. When she likes you but doesn't contact you first, she is often protecting the potential of the connection from premature emotional imbalance. She is not trying to lose you. She is trying not to lose herself inside the feeling she has for you, and so she delays initiation. Not because she is unsure about you, but because she is trying to make sure that if she steps closer, she won't be the only one carrying emotional weight. This is why your reaction matters more than her action, because she is not just responding to your messages, she is responding to your emotional stability in the silence. And if your silence feels like panic, she pulls back further. But if your silence feels like peace, she starts to imagine something different. A version of you that does not chase her. A version of you that exists fully without needing her confirmation. And that version is what begins to pull her in deeper than any message ever could. Because now she is no longer evaluating your attention, she is questioning her own resistance to it. And that is where the dynamic starts to shift in your favor quietly without you even realizing it yet. At this stage, something subtle starts happening that most men completely miss. From your perspective, nothing has changed. She still doesn't initiate. She still keeps her distance. She still gives you just enough to stay interested, but not enough to feel secure. But internally, her mind is no longer in the same place it was before. Because once a woman feels attraction that is real, her behavior doesn't suddenly become direct, it becomes strategic. Not in a manipulative way, but in a self-protective one. She starts managing exposure, not to you, but to her own emotions, because the deeper she feels, the more she risks losing emotional balance if she moves too fast. So instead of texting first, she starts doing something more indirect. She creates safe proximity. She might view your content more often. She might respond faster when you do reach out. She might engage in small ways that feel accidental, but are actually controlled expressions of interest. And from your side, it looks inconsistent, but from her side, it is measured emotional pacing because what she is trying to figure out now is not whether she likes you, it is whether you can handle increasing emotional closeness without destabilizing the dynamic. And here's the part that changes everything. When a woman likes you, but doesn't initiate, she is often placing responsibility on you without telling you. Not responsibility for her feelings, but responsibility for direction. She is watching whether you can lead the emotional rhythm without forcing it. And if you start chasing too much, you remove that sense of direction and replace it with pressure. But if you stay too distant, you remove the emotional bridge entirely. So, she remains in this middle space observing, waiting for something consistent enough to trust, but not intense enough to overwhelm her. And this is where most men misinterpret everything. They think she is playing games, when in reality, she is reacting to uncertainty. Uncertainty about how emotionally stable the connection will be if she fully engages. Because for her, initiating contact first is not just a message, it is a signal of emotional exposure, and exposure only feels safe when the other person has already demonstrated stability. That is why she watches your patterns more than your words. Do you disappear emotionally when she does not respond? Do you overcompensate when she gives less attention? Or do you remain steady, unaffected, present in your own life? Because in her mind, the man who needs less reassurance becomes the man who is safer to approach. And here is where attraction deepens without effort. When she notices that your behavior does not collapse under distance, something shifts internally. She starts associating you with emotional control. And emotional control is one of the strongest signals of long-term attraction potential. But she still won't always initiate because now there is another layer. She is no longer just protecting herself from emotional exposure. She is also testing whether you will eventually create a clear pathway for connection, not through pressure, but through direction. And if that direction never comes from you, she stays in observation mode. But if it does, something inside her stops hesitating because now she is no longer guessing where she stands. She is responding to something structured, grounded, and emotionally clear. And that clarity is what slowly makes her lower her guard without her even realizing she is doing it. There is a point in this dynamic where silence stops meaning confusion and starts meaning evaluation. She is no longer wondering if you like her. She is now wondering something far more specific. What kind of man is he when I am not actively shaping his attention? Because when she likes you but still doesn't initiate, she is not just avoiding vulnerability anymore. She is studying emotional independence, and this is where most men unintentionally fail without even realizing they're being tested. They assume connection is built through more communication, more texts, more check ins, more presence. But in her mind, too much presence without emotional structure feels like instability, not love. So when she doesn't contact you first, she is watching a very specific pattern. Does your life shrink around her silence, or does it continue with direction, purpose, and emotional steadiness? Because one signals dependency, the other signals identity, and identity is what creates long-term attraction. At this stage, she may still be interested, even strongly interested, but she is no longer led by impulse. She is led by observation. And here's the uncomfortable truth most men avoid. If she likes you but never initiates, it often means she is waiting for emotional permission. Not permission to like you, but permission to fully express it without feeling exposed or unbalanced. And that permission is not given through words, it is earned through consistency, through calmness in gaps, through not overreacting to distance, through maintaining your emotional center even when she pulls back slightly. Because every time she withdraws, she is not only creating space, she is measuring your reaction to that space. And your reaction tells her whether the connection is safe to deepen or dangerous to fully enter. This is why some men experience something confusing. When they stop chasing, she doesn't disappear. She actually becomes more present in subtle ways, not always initiating, but increasing micro-engagement, watching more, reacting more, staying closer in indirect ways. Because now she is no longer being overwhelmed by pursuit. She is being invited into stability, and stability is what allows attraction to mature. But even then, she may still not initiate first. Because now her hesitation is not fear of you, it is fear of misalignment. She is asking herself silently, if I move first, will it shift the balance? If I show too much interest, will he change? If I lean in, will I still feel emotionally secure? And if she cannot answer those questions confidently, she stays in controlled distance. Not because she doesn't want you, but because she hasn't yet confirmed emotional consistency. And here is the key shift. Attraction at this stage is no longer about intensity, it is about predictability with depth. She wants to feel that if she chooses emotionally, she won't have to constantly manage instability afterward. So she waits. Not forever, but until your presence becomes something she can rely on without hesitation. And when that moment finally arrives, she stops analyzing your behavior and starts participating in it quietly, naturally, without forcing it. Because now she is no longer protecting herself from the connection. She is allowing herself to enter it. At this point, everything comes down to something most men completely underestimate. It was never about who texts first. It was never about who cares more. It was always about emotional certainty inside uncertainty. When she likes you but doesn't contact you first, it creates a psychological gap. And in that gap, she is not just waiting. She is deciding what kind of emotional experience you represent, because attraction is not just chemistry. It is emotional forecasting. She is asking herself without saying it out loud, will this feel stable if I go deeper? Will the first lose myself in this or grow inside it? Will he remain consistent when I finally step forward? And your behavior in silence answers all of it. Not your compliments, not your charm, not your effort, but your emotional behavior when nothing is being returned immediately. And here is the final truth. Most men only learn too late. When a woman likes you but never initiates, it is not always rejection disguised as interest. More often it is interesting for safety, but safety is not something she creates alone. It is something the dynamic builds together. If you chase, you collapse the balance. If you withdraw in frustration, you break the bridge. But if you remain steady, present, and unaffected by her inconsistency, something powerful happens. She starts to feel your presence without needing to test it. And once that happens, initiation begins to shift naturally. Not because she forced herself to text you first, but because the emotional tension that was holding her back no longer exists. She stops overthinking. She stops delaying. She stops analyzing every move, and she starts acting. But even if she never fully becomes the one who initiates first, that doesn't always mean lack of interest. Sometimes it just means she is responding in her own rhythm, slower, more internal, more cautious. And if you understand that rhythm, you stop taking silence personally. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop chasing meaning in every delay. Instead, you focus on one thing that actually changes outcomes: your emotional consistency, because that is what decides whether she moves closer or stays distant. Not her confusion, not her hesitation, but your stability inside it. And now, before this ends, ask yourself something honestly. Are you reacting to her silence, or are you leading your own emotional state regardless of it? Because the answer to that question is the difference between being chosen slowly and being left in uncertainty without ever understanding why. If this made you reflect even a little, write in the comments, do I stay steady when she goes silent, or do I chase? Like the video if you want more psychology like this. Subscribe for deeper truths most men never hear, and share it with a friend who needs to stop overthinking her silence.